Get your guitar for the quick tips.
Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about diminished chords. I found the best way to play over diminished chords is just not play at all. You just lay right out. Play over the chords that you know. When that diminished chord shows up, don't play anything. And then when the chords you know come back, then you go right back into your sick guitar licks. Here, check it out. As you can see, it's way better to leave a bunch of space than it is to try and play over a chord that you really are not comfortable with. It works so much better every time. Thanks so much for watching this video. Hey, that's not even really a quick tip. That's a waste of everybody's time. I think these people deserve a lot more, and you should do all of that again with some really useful information. You can do way better, Kent. Way better.
Get your guitar for the quick tips.
Hi everybody. Yes, we'll do it again. We're talking diminished chords. I actually still don't play over them. What I do is I actually think about dominant chords. So let's think about this. Over a diminished chord, your first instinct might be diminished arpeggio. Great. It's been done many times. You can listen through Django Reinhardt's discography. You will find a diminished arpeggio over diminished chords all over the place. It's been done and it sounds great. Another option you might be thinking about is using the whole half scale, or some of you like to think of it as a half whole scale, depending what note you're starting on, also known as an octatonic scale. Yes, this can work really well too. However, I find when most players use this scale choice, most are just riding the scale up and right back down, which is not super musical. Scales are not music. That is a subject for another video. So what we need to do is think about these diminished chords as dominants. Each diminished chord relates to a dominant chord. So let's take a look at a common chord progression that uses a diminished. So we're going to start with a C major, which will go to a C sharp diminished, which is going to lead us to D minor, which will take us to G7. The C sharp diminished chord in this case is acting as a sub for A7. It's trying to get us to D minor. So let's take a look at both of these chords so we can see if there's some similarities. A C sharp diminished chord has a C sharp, an E, a G, and a B flat. Let's take a look at the A7 chord. The A7 chord has A, C sharp, E, and G. If we were to make this A7 chord an A7 flat 9, we would then have a B flat on top. So one could just say that this diminished chord is really an A7 with a flat 9, or you can think of it as an A7 where the A, the root note, is raised up a half step to a B flat. I find it much easier to approach soloing over an A7 chord than I do over a C sharp diminished chord. I'm in much more familiar territory, and I know a lot more licks and ways to get around the guitar when I'm thinking about dominant chords. The easiest way to figure out how your diminished chord is acting is to look at the chord that's following that diminished chord. In our first example, we were looking at C major going to C sharp diminished, which then went to D minor. So what I need to do is think ahead and think, where is this diminished chord going? So in this example, what I see is that I'm trying to get to D minor, and the dominant function in music is really trying to get you to some sort of tonic. So in this case, this C sharp diminished is really trying to get us to D minor. So what I need to do is think of, what is the dominant of D minor? Oh, A7. So there's what my diminished chord is functioning as. The easiest way to figure out which dominant chord your diminished is acting as is to also move the root of the diminished chord. Remember, diminished chord intervals are all equidistant from each other. They're all a minor third apart, so therefore all four notes could be the root of the chord. So if you want to figure out what potential dominant it could be, start by lowering each potential root note down a half step, and that's your new root of your dominant chord, and you can see how, if that works, going to the chord you're aiming for. If we take a look at our C sharp chord again, we can see we could potentially lower down a half step to C7. If we jump up a minor third, we have the same chord, just a different inversion. We lower that. We end up with an E flat 7. We'll go up another minor third to a G diminished, or still C sharp diminished. Lower that. That can give us an F sharp 7. Or if we go up another minor third, that takes us to a B flat diminished chord. And if we lower that, that takes us to an A dominant. In this case, in the context we were just using it in, this would be the most logical choice for going to D minor. If you're looking for examples of these diminished chords that show up, they're not as common in most pop tunes. But if you have a listen to My Sweet Lord by George Harrison, you'll see in measure 14 that there is a passing diminished chord. It sticks out like a sore thumb. You could also listen to the jazz standard Have You Met Miss Jones? The passing diminished happens in bar 2, which takes us from the 1 chord, our passing diminished, to get us to the 2 chord. You could also listen to Stacy's Mom by Fountain of Wayne, where in the chorus, bar 5 of the chorus, we have a passing diminished in there as well. There are a few songs where the diminished chord does not act as a dominant, so this is not a hard, fast rule. It works most of the time. 60% of the time, it works 100% of the time. But in those other cases, examples would be Corcovado by Carlos Jobim. We have an F diminished resolving to an F major. Another example would be All Star by Smash Mouth. In the chorus, we have a C diminished chord resolving to a B major. In these cases, I still would think of them as a type of dominant chord or some sort of tension over the chord. It's really all about tension and release. It's just a different form of tension that is less traditional. In those instances, what I would do is either go back to one of the old methods that we talked about, whether it's playing a diminished arpeggio on the chord or playing our octatonic scale or just laying out completely. That also works. I find in a lot of those examples too, you can just ignore the diminished chord and play over the resolution chord, and it'll still sound just fine. The diminished chord is really there as some extra tension and a little bit of spice over what you would be playing if you were stuck on the tonic chord. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and ring that bell. I will be posting a quick tip every single week on Mondays, so stay tuned for next week's video. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.